Good evening. Welcome to Hingham School Committee, March 14th, 2016. Call the meeting to order. As I was reminded that March 14th, Day of Pi, so that's good. On a lighter note, I did like driving in here today because I've never been in this building when there's no other meetings going on, so there was good parking. And it was also refreshing that this is our first meeting in 3 weeks, so it was a nice little break. So, meeting's called to order here at 7:30. First order of business is approval of minutes. 2.1, meetings of the school committee held on February 11, 2016. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on February 11th, 2016.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 2.2, minutes of the executive session of school committee meeting held February 11, 2016. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session of the school committee meeting held on February 11th, 2016.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 2.3, minutes of school committee meeting held on February 22, 2016.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the school committee meeting held on February 22nd, 2016.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 2.4, minutes of the executive session of school committee meeting held on February 22nd, 2016. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session of the school committee meeting held on February 22nd, 2016.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you for all the minutes. Moving to 3.0, questions and comments. Audience's comments are always welcome as agenda items are discussed. The school committee has set aside 15 minutes on this agenda to enable members of the audience to raise questions and make comments of any matter of general concern that is not on the agenda. Do I have any questions from the audience? 4.0, Superintendent's report. Dr. Galler.
Yes, you received in your packet today information about the annual art competition that our students participate in. I do think that the same handout is in the high school newsletter that was also at your place tonight, but really a wonderful piece about the art competition. And we received word today, I can't give you all the details, that a number of students have received awards there that were at the international level. I think there were 4, and perhaps our student rep will mention that, but if not, I will get that information to you. But that information just came out today. Very good news. I would also say, with respect to the high school newsletter, there's a great article in there, something I thought was very interesting, called "A View into the College Application Process," which is the result, the article itself, of Hingham counseling staff going to actually watch how the sorting out of applications and how the decision-making proceeds. Almost a reality kind of show thing, I think, and it's very good reading and may give you some insight and good information. I want to recognize Alec Porter. Alec, from the who's the president of the Hingham Education Association, and Alec has been given a grand award from the Plymouth County Education Association. They give a series of awards every year, from people like rookie teachers to people who've contributed lots of service to the HEA and the communities in which they work, retirees and so on. So anyway, Alec, what's the name of your award? You're not sure. However, we do know there is a banquet coming up, and all of the honorees will be awarded. And I might say the Rookie of the Year, and that's not just in Hingham, but for the whole PCEA, is one of our own teachers, and she's the new first-year Spanish teacher at Plymouth at Foster School. Her name is Chelsea Holloway. So congratulations to both of these, and a number of other Hingham teachers will be honored as well at the banquet, which is on April 4th. April 4th coming up, so congratulations. I just want to give you an update on the assistant superintendent search. In your packet, in the school committee packet, there is the timeline, and the timeline that we have will, we hope, have a recommendation before you at the May 23rd meeting, assuming everything goes smoothly. We will get kicking off the process on Wednesday with a meeting, the first meeting, mainly organizational meeting of the screening committee. We have a full screening committee now. We're using a similar process to what was used 15 years ago when Ellen was appointed, and a very similar process to what we use when we have an opening or vacancy among the principals as well. And so we have 2 members of the school committee who will be on that screening committee, and that would be Cynthia and Carol. And as well, we have an elementary and secondary principal, Mary Eastwood for the elementary and Paula from the high school. We have a teacher, and the teacher is Julie Chandler. Alec chose from among the resource teachers who Ellen supervises directly and the elementary specialist, one of them. There were a number interested, but we have one. We have one director, and the names of the directors and the principals came to me from the Administrators Association, so Dave Jewett managed how to choose those. The director is Katie Roberts. We have John will serve on the committee representing central office. How many am I up to now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7, okay, and we have 2 community members. One of the community members was an Andy's appointment, and we asked specifically for a community member, a resident, who may work as an administrator in another community. So we were able to give Andy a number of names, and we have a selection, and her name is Carrie Sandler, foster school parent, and working in Cohasset as an administrator. And then we have a former school committee member. It was another public member appointment, and that was my appointment. And I did appoint Christine Smith, who was formerly on the school committee, and chair to that role. And Christine will actually chair the committee. So we'll have our first organizational meeting. You have a timeline in there, and as I say, it starts out with the organizational meeting, and then there will be a meeting to review the applications we've posted in School Spring, which is international, actually, job search service, if you will. We do all of our postings for educational openings in there. So we posted there. We posted with the Mass Association of School Superintendents. They will post superintendent and assistant superintendent vacancies. I've announced it to both the Lighthouse and the South Shore communities. We posted it internally, and what else? We put it on the website. So we already, as of this morning, we had, I think, 18 applications. There's another week to go with respect to applications coming in. So I'm happy that we'll get a good pool. So.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Gall on the superintendent's report? Doctor, I have one question. You might not know this, and maybe just go to Heather Rodriguez. Since we've had discussion before, in her notes, they talk about interpreting the school's GPA scale weighting system. Mm-hmm. Did she share any insight, or did you not talk any more with her?
About being there?
Yeah, how
I haven't talked more with her than just the article. No.
Fair enough.
As a follow-up on that question, did you say, or was it follow that on March 22nd, which is next week from tomorrow?
That's the panel discussion.
The panel discussion, they're going to also talk about Hingham's review of the GPA?
I didn't
No?
hear that.
Okay. I thought
Paula said that there was
Oh, she may have.
Did anybody else?
I
It
did
would have
not
been
hear
at the
that.
school committee meeting. Does anybody else remember that, or am I?
I don't.
No? Okay. I'll have to look
May
into
have.
it. I thought there was a discussion that there was going to be like an update to parents on some of their efforts that they've made at reviewing that this year, but.
I don't know if it's
Okay.
that night, that's all. I know there's a report that was done by the young woman who runs the post-secondary planning center, and they were reviewing that, and that will be made public when it's final, but I just didn't hear that would happen.
But I agree, Carol, that would be a good place to do a report, because that's a captive audience.
I'll check with her tomorrow.
I think I remember her saying that when she was here.
That's what I
Okay.
said.
Yeah.
Remember Ray, and I recall that as well. So I'll check with her because I would just want to let parents know about it. In particular, they may be interested in. Okay.
Good. Communications, 5.1, communications received by the superintendent.
Two things are in that packet that I received. There's a letter of thanks there, and really to the district as a whole for the donating that we do to that cause. There's also a letter in there from Katie Roberts that informs us that Hingham Public Schools will participate in Massachusetts Science Standards, the new Science Standards a project working with DESE, so that's exciting for them to be part of that whole movement and what will happen as a result of the new science standards, so we're pleased with that.
Student communications, Brad.
All right, so last weekend, it was the end of winter sports with girls hockey and both boys and girls basketball ending their season through the tournament. And following that is the spring sports meeting is tonight for all athletes and parents. And tomorrow night is the talent expo held by the music department, and they'll be showcasing a melody of classics from the 80s. And Thursday night is the art show in room 103 from 6 to 8, and the Stuco held lip sync from 7 to whenever that ends. And so on Saturday is the semifinals for the Festi show done by the Drama Club, and it'll be at Danvers at 11:30, and they're doing a performance of Edgar Allan Poe poems, which they did a few weeks prior at the high school. And speaking of the Drama Club, this teacher of the month is Miss Levy Sisk. And finally, leading up to Green Week, which will be starting sometime, I believe it's right when May comes around, the Green team is having a recycled art competition, and any entries can be put in until March 24th, and the winner is going to receive a $100 prize. Any questions or comments?
Fred, you know the art show you said was Thursday. Will that
Yeah.
be in room 103 at the
Yes.
high school? I would encourage members of the public to attend. Some of the examples we saw were phenomenal and creative, and I think people would be they would enjoy seeing what's going to be on display.
And I think it's open to students for tomorrow and Wednesday, since it's
Okay.
just an open room right now.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Dr. Gallo, 5.3, other communications.
Well, there's a lot going on, certainly at the state level in particular, and you have information in your packet about a number of things. One of these is that last Monday, a week ago today, there was a hearing at the State House related to the Common Core ballot question, and at hearings people can step forward and make statements. So in your packet, there's a note from Tom Scott of Mass Association of School Superintendents and two testimonies from local superintendents who chose to speak in opposition to elimination of Common Core. And as well, there is the official Mass Association of School Superintendents and Mass Association of School Business Officers position on the need for funding, more education funding for FY17. And there also is information there about the opioid bill that was passed last week, but that just this morning was signed by the governor. And while there are a lot of wonderful provisions of that, in my opinion, because I'm on the coalition, the Hingham Coalition for Prevention of Drug Abuse, the restrictions on medications and dosage and so on, or I shouldn't say dosage, providing more than might be needed for a short kind of term illness. Those are all wonderful things. However, there is a concern about a provision there that would be, in my opinion, another unfunded mandate, and that has to do with the screening of students. And that screening, as I understand it, would be an interview, an actual verbal interview. And we, of course, ask the question, who's going to do the interviewing? Who's going to make up the interview? What kinds of research will be behind the questions? And in addition to giving the interview, there would have to be a provision for communities submitting that information to the state anonymous, obviously, but still collecting it and submitting it. And so there are a lot of concerns among educators who lobbied against it. Both MASS and MASC were lobbying against that provision being in, but it remained in, and the Senate did approve it. So there are a lot of unanswered questions. Like much legislation that passes, the actual task of making this operable for school districts falls to DESE. So it would not become operative, that provision, until 17-18, and during that time, presumably, we will get information about the actual questions, suggestions, I would guess, as to how we are going to find both the time and the personnel to interview students. They're suggesting, I would say more than suggesting, they're saying 2 grades. But for us, if you're talking about 1 grade possibly at the middle school and at the high school, that's in excess of 300 students each, and how it's all going to work is a great concern. But it is part of the bill. It is now law. It was signed this morning, and we will await all that really goes with that. I also, this morning, put into your packet information that I just got on Friday, and that has to do with a position statement of sorts as to a proposal from MASS, and it's not in its final form. It's a draft that would bring forth a suggestion as to an alternate way to fund charter schools. It still would mean that we would be paying an amount for each student, but not the per pupil cost that has been such a challenge. So that more will come on that, but there's a lot going on both at the State House and federally and here in town as well. So a lot for you to read, and as I said on Saturday, go out in the sun and read, because likely you're going to be there all afternoon to get all of that just read and digested, let alone acted upon.
Any questions for Dr. Gell on the communications? Thank you. All right, moving along, 6.1 or 6.0, unfinished business. 6.1, to review changes to the proposed mobile vendor policy as recommended by the Policy Subcommittee, second reading. Liza.
Okay. So we took all of the comments from the committee, and then John gave us he would prefer to have an actual permit that any mobile vendor would complete and sign off, so that we know who the vendors are that might be on the property. And then we re-looked at the policy and then the procedures, which would include the permit and the procedures. We also looked at, in the broader sense of the policy, and wanted to shorten what was in the policy itself, so that it was more consistent with the rest of our policies. But we did not eliminate anything. We moved those into the procedures. And I'd like to note on the policy part, which is what's headed school committee second reading March 14th, the question that Carol had about the softball field, in number 1, we changed it so that added as reasonably practicable, and that was Ray had noted that should cover for the softball field. And then we added in of number 2 the issue about that signage and logos must be appropriate. And then another issue that had been raised, a bigger issue, we put in the procedures, or in the permit, that a query check for any vendors as well. And so so then this would be part of the overall section 7.4. And then if we look at the permit, we also wanted to tie it in so that we're consistent with any town regulations or bylaws with the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen. And that we would have the vendors sign off on this and acknowledge that they've read the policies and procedures, so that that would be attached to the permit, so that they would know all of our rules and regulations, and that we would have this as a means of, if something happened, we have a means of addressing an issue, and there would be no cost for the permit. So that's, we used pretty much the same information that had been presented before, but we've put it in a different format. This is the biggest change, so. Any questions? Comments?
Dr. Ed?
Just a couple of thoughts. When I read this, under 7.4.13, the opening sentence, would it make sense to require the permit to be visible or shown at all times? When you go to the second portion of this project, there are other permits that are required if you sell food and so on. So I guess my question is, have you picked that idea up at any spot?
We can add that in as a general rule, if, John, would that be helpful?
It's on
Is
the
it-
permit itself that says they have to have it, whether they have to display it, it's just gonna be a piece of paper, you know?
This, so it
Yeah.
doesn't say display, though.
Right, I don't know that they have to display it,
It's not
you know. I
how
mean,
would you know that they have it if
Well,
they're
it could be
there?
asked for, right, yeah.
I think it's a good idea,
Okay.
because otherwise,
Well,
you're presuming that they have it, and someone would have to ask them if it's not on display, so you don't want to have to ask.
And for consistency's sake, it probably should be noted in the policy,
Sure.
requiring it in the permit to be displayed.
And Liza, if that is going to be the consensus of the committee, then there are other permits that are required based on the fare that's being offered, so maybe they should, that food vendors permit and so on, maybe that should be required to be displayed at all times.
We might want to also check though, I mean, if
Those boards have
if
their own
those
regulations.
boards don't even require their own permits to be displayed, then for us to now be requiring their
Yeah.
permits to be displayed, that might be.
We can check that, though.
Yeah, they
to
probably
make
have
it
their own regulations
consistent,
about
yeah.
And the only other thing that when I looked at then under bullet points 1, 2, and 3, bullet point number 2 is at the discretion of the school department, but bullet point number 3 is the discretion of the school committee. It seems as if it should be consistent.
Okay.
One, the same on both of them.
Okay.
Whichever the decision is. Maybe it's both. In
Yeah,
both.
I mean, in the past, you've used language that kind of generically refers to someone representing the school department or school committee, whether it be a teacher or an administrator or whatever. I don't know how you want to.
Okay.
On the display, you could easily just put in the first sentence, who obtain and display a permit.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way.
Any other comments, questions? Is your intention to vote on it at the next meeting, or what's your intention?
Yeah, we'd like to, because the spring season is starting, so we want to get this out to the vendors and.
So can you get us a clean copy?
Yeah, yeah.
So that we could review ahead in case there's any things we need to tweak
Yeah.
before we vote on March 28th?
And you said other things were going to go into the policy, the procedure?
So the items that were in the policy before were moved into the procedure, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We just cut and pasted them.
Oh, so they're actually in the okay. They're in the permit.
Well, they're on the permit document on your computer.
I see,
Yeah.
here's the procedure, so
Yeah.
I saw it as part of the permit,
Yeah.
yeah,
There were
yeah,
just
yeah.
some nitty-gritty
No, I
things
got
we
it.
thought belonged.
Yeah, no, I read it before, I just missed the heading.
All right, moving along. New business, 7.1, to receive information about the bid process for a 7D 10-passenger van and act on a bid award to New England Wheels, Inc. in the amount of $35,587 as recommended by John Ferris. John?
Yeah, we went out to bid for a 7-day transportation van. We've been on a process over the past several years of replacing our fleet. This was a bid that we put out, I think, in mid-February, and the bids came in very favorable, actually better than we got last year. This is the van we got last year was a lower roof. We found that the lower roof is a little bit too tight for a driver, so we actually got a mid-roof on this. So it's a little bigger of a van at a cost that was less than last year. We got 3 bids come in, and you can see that they range from $35,587 to $43,023. Interestingly enough, one company bid from Ohio, but they didn't call us for the bid spec, so they didn't comply with mass procedures, procurement laws. So that bid had to be disqualified, although it was not the lowest bidder anyhow. It was at $36,399. So what I'd make a recommendation is New England Wheels has been a vendor for us in the past. Actually, last year they produced the vans too. They know us well. We work very well with them. Their price came in as the lowest bid, so I would recommend that we award the bid to New England Wheels in the amount of $35,587.
Does anyone want to make a motion, then we'll go into discussion?
I'll make a motion that we award the 10-passenger transportation van bid to New England Wheels at the price of $35,587.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Do you have any discussion?
I have
Yes.
a question.
Yep.
What did we pay for the van last year, and what was the original budget?
The original budget is $36,000, and last year we paid, I think it was about a few $100s more for a slightly smaller van. It was they changed the chassis last year. They did away with the original chassis, so they changed the chassis. So the companies that were doing this bidding, they were uncertain of how they put these vehicles together. So, the learning last year has actually produced better results for this product this year.
Great.
Any other questions?
Do we know, I see in this that it's for 2015 or 2016 van, do we know which one this is?
I think it's a 2016. Yeah, I'd have to look. Yeah, it's a 2016.
John, how often do we replace these?
We have 8 vans
8.
plus a spare, Ed, a couple of, one spare anyway. So we're on a cycle of almost replacing one every year now. We went several years without getting a replacement. We picked up a couple. We picked up a wheelchair and a regular van last year. The year before, I believe we had another one. We have another one scheduled for 17 should that budget get approved. So we're almost on a replacement schedule of 1 per year now, and that will put us in a pretty good position. We typically go about 7 years or, between 7 years and 120,000 miles on these vans is when we want to get them replaced. So when you chart that out, it comes out now to about 1 per year. So over 8 years, 7, 8 years, we'll replace, the whole fleet.
Is there any value at the end of 8 years?
Yes, for example, last year, you may recall, one of the vans that we sold to South Shore Educational Collaborative, we got $6,000 residual value for that, which was, deposited with the general fund in the town. And then also we had a maintenance van. We took one of the vans and we eliminated one of the maintenance vans and sold that on US on gov.deals. But so our maintenance person took over one of those vans. So with this one here, we are short a van or another vehicle for our facility manager. So there's a possibility that the facility manager may drive this van, or they may drive the other maintenance truck once we get a new truck for next year's budget. So we tend to recycle. When we eliminated that last van last year, it had 199,000 miles on it. And these are hard miles, right? They're hard miles, lots of stops.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you, John. All right, the fun stuff. 7.2, to hear an update on the status of the FY17 operating budget. Dr. Gallo.
Yes. John, could you turn the fan off? So the screen will stop wiggling. All right, I did give you paper copy tonight because we're getting down into the details, and the print is just too small for everyone to follow on this. So I did give you paper copy, and there are only 3 slides, so it's a short story, but a big dilemma at the end of the story. So just as an update in terms of the big figures, so we started with a preliminary budget of, thank you, 48,862, 649, and the reductions that I'm going to show you tonight, which I says proposed because you have not voted these, but that we would be recommending as of today are in total now of 807,366. That's a combination of new information that we have and as well reductions that we're recommending. That revised budget came to 48,055,283, but our target, the budget that was voted by the advisory committee and the selectmen a couple of weeks ago, is 47,613,721, and so that leaves us with a gap of 441,562. So if you add the 807 and the red number, which is yet to be accomplished, that's about 1.2 million in reduction, some of which are pieces of new information we know about personnel as personnel move around. I might say in that regard that there are no more unknowns that we know about. That sounds kind of convoluted, but you know, we had 12 people on leave. We now know what all of them are going to do, and so there is some reduction that showed up as a result of that, but there's no more unknown there. We have the same retirements that we've had for a long, long time, and we don't have any new ones that are on the horizon that I know about. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody at the end of the year could move away or resign or some other piece of information could be known, but we're past the unknown stage. The big unknown for us at the moment is enrollment, and we have passed the first week or so of the kindergarten enrollment. A lot of packets have been picked up, but very few have been returned to date, so that still totally is an unknown. And the reason that's important is we have the offset that we need to make sure we can come to based upon those who will pay tuition. That's an important piece, and the other piece is whether or not we need 16 sections of kindergarten, and if we didn't need 16, then that would be a place that we could make a reduction in the base budget. So that's a really important number. Enrollment overall is important, of course, but most of the other changes we will know over the summer and not in time for us to take them into account for this budget. So that's the first page of where we are. So moving on, there are 2 more sheets of paper. One details how we came up with that 807,000 in reductions. And I can put that up here, but I'm not sure about your ability to see it very well. And that's the reason I gave you paper. So I'm going to look at the paper. So this is in order of the budget section or budget function numbers. And so.
Excuse me 1 second. Did you give us a piece of paper besides this long one?
Yes.
It's the only one it's the only one I have, maybe.
This has that stuff
Oh.
right there.
You know what?
Because this 807 matches up.
I thought she put the others at your place. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
No, that's okay, just want to make sure we all have the right paperwork in front of us.
They're the smaller packets.
That's it?
Yeah, I thought Nancy had put those at your place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So. The big sheet has more information on it. This is kind of a summary of that.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so in the order going down of the function, there are some on the table for the audience, Andy. It's- Okay, so if you look at the very bottom of the page where you see the 807, that's the number you saw on the prior page. And then there are two columns there. A column that has changes in the budget. Those are the kinds of things like leaves and some other changes we've made along the way. Offsets from the Kids in Action account, that kind of thing, are in the change column. And then the cut column, those are things that have been reduced from the page of new initiatives that we submitted. And so you can see the totals at the bottom, 449,923 in changes. And those are changes really to the base budget. And then the reductions from the new page is 357,443. And I want to go over the changes in a little more detail, which we'll do on the next page. But to tell you that that if we look at the reductions that are there and look at the number on your big page that's up in the left-hand corner on the big sheet that shows where we are now, we did have one change that isn't a change downward, and that was we did get a notification that there was a high school student who would be applying, has applied to vocational school, our most expensive vocational school, I would say. So we had to add back into the budget $23,000 because we only had 2 vocational placements in there at less expensive schools. So we couldn't risk. Sometimes we can say, well, we've got 3 or 4 in there and we only expect 2 and we'll take the risk. But in this case, we had to add money in case that student gets accepted. If she were not to get accepted, of course, the money could come out. So if you then look to the third page, which is a page that has all of the original new initiatives. And it says restated at the top. It was restated only that we organized it differently because we had 2 issues in there that were kind of hard to understand in terms of being in a linear fashion. One was we had the buses in there with all 21, but we took out 1 bus. And to clarify that, if you look under our regular budget, 3,300, you'll see that now we've got the new bus in one place, the new driver in another, and then the remainder of what it would cost to accept the bid for the new buses. Those are in different places. So that was one clarity. And then up in our 2,700 in the original document, we had put both of the guidance counselor and the transition tutor on this list just to show that they were 2 separate items, but that we would only do one or the other, but only one was in the base budget. So we wanted to clarify that this page, even though it listed them both, we were never proposing buying both of those. And so you can see them listed as separate items now, and down next to last line in the budget where we've taken that that number off of the original 754,929 that we tried to make clear during explanations during the process, but I'm not sure that ever was clear. It was not double counted in the budget, but on this page, which is a separate piece of paper just for the new initiatives, both of those things were in there, so we took them off the page. So these are the things that we have proposed being cut to date, and we would be adding some more of them tonight, actually. So the things that we've already taken out of the budget of new initiatives are recommending that we take out, but they were in that amount that was in the slide presentation of 222. The high school phys ed / health teacher, that would be gone. The math tutors, we reduced those. The original proposal was 25 hours a week at the elementary level for each school, and we reduced that to 20. And so that was a savings of $23,000. So that figure now is $94,502. Similarly with the elementary tech assistant, as an originally, and that was a position to be shared among the 4 elementary schools, originally was budgeted, requested at 7 hours a day. This now reflects 5 hours a day to be shared, not 5 hours at each school, 5 hours a day to be shared. And that's a savings of 11,000, so that new figure is 27,639. The middle school counselor, we did remove, we still have in there the transition position. The post-secondary coordinator changed to a guidance counselor role from a tutor kind of role. We eliminated that, and so there's a 0 there. The nurse is still sitting there, and that's an increment of going from a paraeducator kind of rate to a full teacher rate, and the person is an RN anyway, but this would be a person who's both an RN and also certified by DESE. It would become an HEA union member and a full teacher. That is still in there. The new bus, we took out the 21st bus, and we took out the driver for that bus. It would be 119 to be able to move forward with the bid that we got recently. We're going to talk about transportation later. We've taken out the maintenance person. This is a position that we've asked for now 3 years in a row. It was restoration of a position we lost at the time East School was open. The administrative instructional coordinator in special ed for this office, assistant help in special ed. We took out the 70,000, we put 35,000 in, but we would be looking, and I'm meeting with Alec tomorrow about this, looking to add that role to an existing position, so it would not be, and likely will not be that amount, but I can't tell you that yet, what the amount would be that would be needed there. The teacher split between East and South special ed teacher to support the kindergarten. We took that out last year because we needed to add a 16th section, and at the moment we've had to take it out again this year, unless of course we had more dollars than we have needs in the kindergarten in terms of the tuition account. We could possibly fund that. And we added back in the vocational, or added in a vocational position. So what is left in then? Going through what came out and what came in. What's left in is the 35,000 to support, adding to a role to support special ed needs in this building at 35. It won't be that, but that's there. The 119,610 for the bus lease is still there. The .2 FTE for the math specialist and the .2 for the art position at the middle school, I've left in for now because they are not added FTEs. Adding to people that already exist, so we're not adding any more people into the budget. And then the 29,996, which is a net number. It's a number for the nurse less the compensation for the aid that we now have. So that is $220,663. That's what's still in from the new initiatives. All of the other things that I didn't mention would be out in our recommendation for tonight. So, so that would mean the transition room, that would mean the math tutors, that would mean the shared technology specialist, and I think that's it. So that's a pretty bare bones budget. So we're at a gap of 441,562. The things that I've suggested that we need to leave in amount to 226,63. And so if we leave those in, we still, or even if we took them out, we would still have $220,899, $221,000 that would need to come from our base budget. So if we took out those things I've listed, the 5 things that we've still got in there, which I think are needs, then we would have to go to the base budget and somehow find things to cut there to come to the 440, to come to the
441?
no, the 47,613,721 target. So we are going to speak a bit later this evening about the transportation, because there are some very good reasons for leaving that number in there for now, but we also have some ideas of something that we could explore that we need to talk about in terms of the executive session, because it relates to a lease, and we'll talk about that part later. About whether or not we can find a way to reduce that cost. But I think you've all seen the recent lists of breakdowns, and Patrick and his crew do a wonderful job in getting our buses up and running every day, but almost every day we have some sort of a breakdown or another. Just the other night, even though we had received a report a few days earlier, the other night the girls' hockey team was coming home from their hockey tournament game, which they won that night, and the bus broke down on the way home at night on the road. So, we've got to do something about that situation. So we've got a challenge ahead of us, and usually at this time of year I'm apt to say, well, there's still some unknowns, and I still think that we may find some more savings. I'm not so optimistic about that at this point. So the second point, which is the next thing on the agenda really, is that we've talked a lot about the reading adoption, and that is in the base budget, so it's there now. We really need to make that adoption. We've got all of these classes doing a pilot this year. Are we supposed to give up the pilot and go back to the closets and get out all the old books and hand them out again and look for a 12th year of books? That just doesn't make any sense at all. That's a one-time cost. We thought that we had a good solution to looking to whether or not that could be a capital. It's a capital-like expense in terms of happens infrequently, in this case 11 years, and as well any kind time you have in a budget as big as ours, a very large purchase, if we have to fund it all out of the operating budget, it is always going to sway the budget for that year. In particular, it is going to impact the percent of increase. And many judgments, as you all are aware, are made on the basis of percent of increase, not just dollars, but percent of increase, so that if there's some way this year and for the future that we can just level out our budget, and so that it isn't impacted by those big expenditures that come on every now and then, we should do that. So I think we are all of a mind that this might be a nice way to try to do two things, is to fill that gap of having to take over $200,000 out of our budget, even if we gotten rid of everything, take it out of the base budget. However, we found over the weekend that not everybody is similarly minded on that topic. So we were going to talk about the mechanics of how this might work with respect to substituting some capital costs that we would be willing to defer in order to take the reading budget out of capital, that would be able then to compensate for the loss of capital that we have, having to cut the 1.2 million. But I think now we have to talk about a different strategy. So that's the background, and Linda's here, and Linda was very helpful over the weekend trying to sort out the issue of what the problems were in this regard and whether we could resolve them. So I don't know if you want to make a comment. I don't want to speak for you, but.
Linda Critch, 21 Martins Cove Road. I just wanted to let you know that there has been a grave concern about taking the books and the textbooks and putting them in capital, and then the $207,000 in operating would increase the base budget. And as you know, the subcommittee spent a great deal of time looking at not only the increase for this year, but the rate of growth over past years and what that means for future years. So there's a big concern about the impact of taking the textbooks out, but using that $207,000 for additional operating, which would then transfer over to next year and increase the base budget for future years. And so, as you know, everybody's very concerned about the rate of growth. And so there is concern out there. So it's just something for you to consider.
Belinda, on that note, since the number's been set,
Right.
you guys already vote, the rate of
Yeah.
growth has been established. Also, we always have a textbook allocation in our budget. This was just an increase because of this one-time expense. So you could almost make the argument that by us keeping this in the operating budget, then we've actually increased the rate of growth at a greater rate because it goes down after 2 years.
Right.
So
And
I sort of...
that's one of the points. It will go down after 2 years. If you use that $207,000 for something other that will be a permanent part of the operating budget going forward, the base budget, then it keeps on going. So it's looking out into the future, and I think we're just all very concerned. $2.2 million increase this year was a big increase. We're not sure we can consistently keep doing that, and so anytime it even looks like that's going to increase, there's something going to increase the base budget right now, we're all very concerned about it.
I guess the only thing I have to say on that is, I understand the rate of growth, but the number has been set. You know, we came in with basically a $48 million budget, or we have ours down to $48 million. The town has recommended or voted on a $47.6 million budget. So whether that 200,000, the rate of growth has been set. It doesn't matter how the money is spent, but it's already been set.
That
So-
$207,000 is for two years. Then in the third year, it'll go back down. So we'll have a decrease of $207,000 in the operating budget. As I said, it's not a permanent increase in the operating budget that will then transfer in the out years for forever, for the long period of time. That's going to just increase the budget for 2 years. Now, again, I mean, there is an argument that it is a capital, but I'm just trying to explain how outside people are looking at what's going on. Again, no one's
Might have
happy.
to spend some time with them to understand exactly what they
nobody's
mean.
happy
but
about this, and I just think we're trying to face reality here.
Ray, do you have a question? Yes.
So I'm not sure I understand. So what we were suggesting is taking it out of the base operating budget and funding it with
Out of
capital in some form.
Right,
So it wouldn't be in the operating budget.
right.
So we wouldn't have to worry about the increase and adding it and being part of the base next year because it would come out. So I guess I'm not, and the other thing I wanted to ask is, so you said there was grave concern expressed. So when was this grave concern expressed? In what public meeting? Because I haven't heard advisories speak in
No,
a
we
group
haven't. It's
about.
been talked about in some other meetings. I
Well-
can't answer that question.
But, so
There's just been-
but that can't happen.
What do you mean?
The discussion about this has to happen in a public meeting.
Oh, true. No, there's not been in-depth discussion about it. There's not been a public voice of opinion about it. I'm just trying to give you some feedback.
There's no support for it.
No, I understand that. But I
It's-
haven't seen
it's
anything
not
on an
been-
agenda where there's been a
No,
discussion that's
no.
expressed this concern where there are emails, and so I'm just trying to figure out who's having this discussion.
It's just kind of some feedback. Trying to,
By one person or
No,
a group of
I'm-
people, or?
trying to be helpful here.
I
Okay.
think the reason the concern arose, or not arose, the concern was the concern, I guess, but this concern came to light was that in preparation for tonight's meeting, since we were going to talk about that option, I sent an email to Libby Claypool and a copy to John, and did I send you a copy, Linda, originally?
No, I think
I get
I came in.
To Betty, Betty
Betty.
Foley, with the question, just the question about technically how would this work?
Mhm.
So,
And so it was going to capital, and then other people were included, so.
I wanted to be able to tell you what needed to, what we needed to do
Because
and what,
And I had asked a question at a prior meeting about, we kept talking about the reading program and how it's going to be funded, and, you know, I do feel like there were people on your subcommittee who seemed to be supportive
tell you, there were-
of treating
and
it
I
as
have-
a capital.
We have had anecdotal conversations by the subcommittee, and in, I think, as Dot said at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, about this could be considered a
Right.
capital expense. It met the criteria.
Right,
And
and
those
Jim had
were-
said it would be
those
up
were
to
open
you to
meetings, so.
advocate on our behalf
So,
for that. So apparently that didn't happen. So let me understand. So I think what I'm hearing between the lines is that if we took the book, the reading program, out of our base budget and we paid for it out of capital, that would allow us then to pay for a few of these things that Dot's telling us that we really need.
right, and that
And-
seems to be,
Or close the gap. And so at the end of the day, we're really below level services here. I don't know, are the other town departments below level services as well?
they're all levels.
They're level, so we're not. Okay.
But, sorry, to your point, Carol, so how does, and I may just not be understanding, how does taking this out of the operating budget, putting it in capital, you know, I assume the concern is that we're gonna add personnel, which then creates.
Right.
Okay, but most of what Dot's just telling us is that she's not adding FTEs.
Well, I mean, Carol just said we want to
Okay.
add some things, but no matter if it's an incremental, I mean, that'll stay. If it's a personnel incremental cost, that stays next year and next year and next year and next year.
No, but it's an amount for textbooks, so it wouldn't stay.
No, I'm saying once we take it out,
If you took
they're
the
saying once we take it out, they're
out,
worried we're
and
gonna
you used-
replace
and
it
Carol
with
just
personnel.
said you used the 207 for things.
It would
that-
allow us to.
Which becomes part of the base budget.
We're not using it for anything, we're just
I'm-
closing
Yeah,
a gap
well-
of
And I'm
441,000.
supportive of all,
So-
paying for all of
Right.
these things.
There's
just-
nothing,
I
there's nothing
totally
new becoming on,
understand.
it's just
Right.
closing a gap of,
I
$141,000.
have a hard time with the fact that we are not at level services and the other town departments are.
Right, and I think we do zero-based budgeting. So we don't take the amount from this year and then add to it. We start over from scratch every year. So if we took that 230 or whatever it is out this year, we would not be seeking to, it wouldn't be there to accommodate some other need or want or anything else. We wouldn't be seeking to add personnel because we know there's a placeholder for 230,000. It comes out, it's not in there, and we start over from scratch next year. So I'm not understanding why there's a problem with trying to take that out of the
Depends on what
base.
you do with the $207,000. If you put it toward things that would then become a permanent part of the operating budget, that adds to the base budget going forward.
and I'm assuming that would include to transportation.
so I guess where there's also confusion is if you guys gave us a $47.6 million budget, and just using, next year, whether we spend 47.6 million or not, that's our base, and you're going to give us some sort of percentage growth on that. So I think, you guys always give us a number. We then give you as much detail as possible on what we're going to spend it on. But at the end of the day, we actually have the final decision.
Right.
And so I think we're just trying to get into your framework of getting down to 441, and whether we take it from, textbooks and put it into capital expense, which we've all decided that's okay. You've also had us do the exercise of, we were awarded capital, then you asked us to make some reductions, which we did, and then we got to keep them. So now that, things move around a lot, I mean, as we've talked about with Hawk and with the PRS windows, those might have been some of our top priorities, but Dr. Gallo said those were not necessarily her top priorities, but she just wanted to get some things checked off. So this is something that has to be checked off, for lack of better words. And I guess I'm just having a hard time when it has nothing to do about the growth. The number's been set, and so I don't really, with all due respect, I don't completely agree with the analysis
I think
that
it
this is a
depends
change
on
in
how
rate of growth.
That different 207, how that is actually, it's just a mess of how that is actually used, and if if the 207 is taken out of your operating budget, but is still in there to use to go towards something that would build the base of the budget.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm suggesting. It comes out, it's not there. So we're now at a gap of 441, 562.
No, it depends on
I'm
how you
seeking
use
to
it, Ray.
reduce that gap
All
by
right.
removing the 200 and whatever $1,000 from the operating budget and finding another source of capital funds, whether
Right.
it be reserves or otherwise, to pay for it. I'm not suggesting that, I'm suggesting we lower to get to where you approved.
Right,
So we
right.
would not be seeking to use that 200 for something else.
Though Carol has just said
I
that you'd
would
like to
agree,
add
but
back
I-
things. So
I'd
again,
have to see if everybody
it's
agrees
how
with
you
that.
use it.
Well, I wouldn't
guess,
say
what the
add
bottom
back
line
things,
is.
because we haven't taken
Right.
Right,
those
right.
things out
So, I mean,
yet,
you're
but-
still at a 440.
I think those are two different things, though.
Yeah, they are
No,
two
I
different
just-
things,
well,
but they get,
They could be,
Right.
but they're not necessarily, because.
and they get muddied.
By
in the middle.
reducing that gap, it allows us perhaps to then fund some of these positions that we're
Perhaps.
saying we
Right.
desperately
And
need
actually,
to do.
right now, what, 440, and I didn't understand, I guess the difference from the February 22nd cuts were 838, and now they're 807.
Because of that extra tuition.
Because we had to add back a vocational student. That was new. Yeah.
But, yeah, so you're 400,000, but there's still additions in that. There are still a list of
Things that she hasn't
add-ons
cut.
that
The 5 things that we
makes the
haven't cut.
difference
Right.
that we, as an ed subcommittee, did not consider.
So I think what we're
Well,
being.
one of them you did.
Oh, an upgrade to
Right.
the,
Um,
we considered it.
But that would mean if we eliminated those 5 things as well, then we still would need to take more money out of the,
Yeah,
what
I
we
think
call the
that
base
we're
budget.
147, and that was before you readjusted
So
the
that's
number.
teachers.
So we may have to let some teachers go.
Can I add a comment? So my interpretation of this, I guess I'm a little surprised about the discussion of the textbooks come 2 years, that's gone, because I don't remember that as part of any discussions that I heard. The other thing of the proposal of paying for the textbooks out of capital that was discussed with the subcommittee, was discussed at the selectmen's meeting, and we got positive response from that. And my interpretation of it was that we were going to look at our current capital allocation and substitute those initiatives with the textbooks and defer those things so that we would still be that same line item amount that we were allocated for capital, that we were choosing how to use that capital money. And that then we would be looking at the target of coming in at the 47,613,000, and how do we use our budget appropriately for that? So that by us coming and bringing this out, it was a matter of being public at town meeting of our prioritization of what the advisory committee and the selectmen had voted of our allocation of the operating budget and the capital budget. So that's how I interpret this, is that we were trying to be public
Transparent.
about
Yep.
this. Another concern, I must say, with this discussion of rate of growth, I'm going to be really honest, that when the advisory committee voted the town budget, very good things that you reallocated money. I am not disputing, I agree with what you did as a taxpayer. But you made the decision to move capital money from a one-time project to approve some changes to the operating budget of the town budget. You add an IT person, which we desperately need. We added animal control officer. We added things that the town desperately needs, additional library hours. I'm in favor of that. But to me, that's an increase of rate of growth. For what we're asking for, we are substituting our priorities of the budgets that were voted for us. And so I would like to have further discussion with the full advisory committee on this issue, because going into the budget process, the discussion for all departments was level services. We come back, we know the town has a difficulty. We're below level services. We have a really good school system. We don't want to damage that really good school system. I'm willing to work within this. And we're trying to find as many ways as we can to make this work for the kids. But I have a really hard time with this argument about rate of growth. I'm putting it all out there of trying to get within what we're given of the budget to do the best program we can for the kids and not damage the program anymore. So I'm having a hard time with this.
Oh, I understand. And I can say, when we did all our spreadsheets and we shared them all with you, your average rate of growth, both historically and projected forward, was over 4%. And a lot of that was due to over 5% increase on your personnel lines. We can't sustain that. And I think that's where all this is coming from. We cannot sustain that. The other side, town side, their rate of growth is not like that at all. So it's an issue. It's a big issue. And it's something that the whole town is concerned. It's a concern. It's, no one's trying to be difficult. It is a very big concern that we can't sustain 5% increase in personnel costs or overall a 4% increase in the budget. It's just, we can't sustain it. New growth isn't there. The numbers aren't going to come. It's not going to work. And then what are we going to do?
Well,
You will have
at
to
some
cut
point
teachers.
we're
Nobody
gonna
wants to cut teachers.
But that's
Nobody
what
wants
we're
to.
looking
I mean,
at.
that's why we're saying we've got to hold the line. We've got to be very careful. Nobody wants to cut teachers.
So if I could, and we've talked a little bit about this, and I'm hoping that, what folks have said on the other side at Town Hall about having more discussions about how
Yes.
budgeting is approached at the town-wide level, because I think we really need to do that.
No, and we've agreed, and I think, there is a consensus around that. It's kind of like, let's get through this, and this,
Sure, no, I understand.
this budget season, I think, has put everybody on alert.
It's just that we've been discussing for a number of years and letting people know that, we operate within a system that we didn't create, Massachusetts didn't create. It's a national system of teachers and paraeducators and other staff and administrators who are in a structure of steps and educational columns for advancement.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that we can abolish. We have made great strides. I think Alec concurred last time I asked him that I think the changes we made to the last contract benefited both sides. But we're not going to change that structure overnight. So there has to be an acknowledgement that that structure exists. Now, if you take that acknowledgement, you cannot then tell teachers who are, in my opinion, underpaid for what they do. You can't tell them they can't get a cost of living adjustment of 2%, which is what everyone else is getting, and what some folks call an equity adjustment, which is reasonable and fair and consistent with our benchmark communities, and we're still right around the middle. You can't tell them that they can't have that. So we have to find a way to have folks acknowledge that we operate differently than the rest of the town, that we operate within a structure that we did not create and we cannot change, and we have to find a way to accommodate it in some way.
Well, I think you're right, and I think everybody realizes it, and we have, again, been hit with reality this year. New growth is saved is different. We've always had a savior. Medical insurance we've had a savior. We didn't have a savior this year, and so we're all in this together. And I don't think, as I said, no one's happy about this. No one's happy. The subcommittee didn't want to make a recommendation, what we thought was below-level services, though we were confident that that could have been made up with adjustments by the time May comes around. Nobody's happy about that. And we all know, but I think that's what nobody wants to be in this situation next year.
Dr. Gallo, 2 questions for you. So, what are our other options to get us our reading program?
Well, the reading program is there. The issue is
Our new
about the
purchases.
transportation and those 5 items, which includes the transportation. The reading adoption is there. The interesting thing is
So
that
then
if we had thought of the capital idea early, before we put the budget together, And if we had proposed the reading program to come out of capital in the first place, maybe the result would have been different. On the other hand, because capital operates independently, almost everything we put in capital is a little scary. It can be removed. The irony is that we can do the whole reading adoption this year for $344,000. $344,000 if we did the whole thing next year. We divide it into two parts. So here's an example where the way we budget makes things sometimes more expensive, because it's going to cost us more to do half of it this year and half of it next year than it would be if we could do the whole thing, the total.
So it'd be
and
344 if we did it all in 1 year. and
Yes.
then-
And
it's
384.
What's that?
384 if we broke it up.
Into the two parts. So the
384.
total amount is 384, which we don't have an alternative to doing it, because if we can't even fund or find a way of funding the two something that's in this year, then the thought of adding to next year, because next year's not going to be any better. I mean, new growth isn't going to improve overnight. We hope that it will over time. It's not going to improve overnight. Next year is a negotiating year, for all 6 of our units. And so things aren't going to get better overnight. They're just not.
Okay, so the reading adoption is already still in the base budget, so then let's
Yeah.
go back to 7.2. Also, we did go into 7.3 to discuss options for funding the proposed elementary reading program and act as appropriate. You're not recommending any action right now on the
No,
reading adoption?
no.
Okay. On 7.2, how are we gonna get, right now, we're still 441,000 away. When are we gonna close that? I do think it would be good that we did vote on a budget, my personal preference, to vote on a budget before we go to town meeting.
I would agree.
So what are the next steps if we don't have much more information?
So the next steps are going back and looking at all of our numbers again, but coming up with 441,000 isn't going to occur by taking 2,000 off of this and 5,000 off of that and something else. So what are the things that add up in big chunks? And they're teachers. And so where do you go for teachers? And that's a challenge, because we have comfortable class size right now at the elementary level, and you all get copies every week, every month of the actual enrollments in every class. And you look at that chart, you look at the ones for any of the past months, and you tell me where we can take a teacher out, where we can go from 5 sections to 4, and then you look at the class size that will result. It has taken us since 2009-10 to get back to comfortable class sizes at the elementary level. So taking out one teacher is really only going to impact one building and 4 classes. We have 96 elementary classes. And taking out one teacher would be, depending on what level we use, $56,000 to $62,000. It's a lot of those to fill this gap. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place, because we either do that or we take out all of those things, including the nurse. I think that's not responsible.
Can I ask 2 questions? John, do you know if the town's received any of the FEMA money? I know that was some conversation that it was in progress. Do we know if any of that's been come in? If that's come in?
I don't know if it's the checks in hand. I know that there were numbers as to what.
Let-
Poor Linda.
Actually, the FEMA money is what's helping us balance the town
Yeah,
budget
it's already
this year.
allocated.
All right. So
It's part of all of the revenue that we're looking at.
Thank you. And my second question is, what if we don't vote a budget that's in line with the advisory committee's vote?
The town meeting will vote the recommendation of the advisory committee. But whether there's something statutorial that you have to vote, I would guess you have to, once it's voted by town meeting, you'd have to vote to accept it, or perhaps we wouldn't get it. I don't know. But voting it isn't going to change the number at town meeting.
On the floor of town meeting to change
It could be, yeah. We've never had that occur. That would be unfortunate,
Well,
but
I'd like to
I don't
see-
know. I'm not sure where to go.
I'd like to see from you what you would cut, and then maybe we can have a chance to relook at the textbook issue, because
Yeah,
I
would be
guess it's what
recommending at
year
this
we take the
point-
pain, but I
All
rather
but those
kick
5
that
things
down
I
the-
would be recommending, and, you know, even if we gave up on those .2 FTEs, which really, it's not only small money, but it's not being added on to another person. And we've done without those things for a long time. We have 1.8 math specialists among 4 schools. We're only looking to have 2 to be shared among 4 schools, so I don't think that's an atrocious, and the middle school would allow them to offer more sections because we didn't add any classroom teachers for increased enrollment in the middle school. So .2 allows, it's another period, and so for an alternate day kind of class, then we can add 2 sets of classes to that. The issue here, that's an issue that has to be resolved. And I don't know where, at the moment, in this office, we can find hours to provide the help that is needed in that office without adding some hours to somebody else. And again, that is not adding another position. It's a position that already exists. So the big number in there, of course, is the transportation number. And we are going to talk about some options in executive session that we can explore further. An idea that just came up recently, and that honestly I don't know whether or not we have enough time to put in place for this year. So there's, and the nurse. So those are the 5 things that I would argue that we have to find a place for. And it seems to me at the moment, the only way to find a place for those 5 things is to go to our base budget and take out 5 comparable things to get there.
John, I know we've talked about a lot of numbers. So we keep on talking about 207 for the first year on the reading options. You said if we do it all at once, it's 344,000.
Right.
If we do it over 2 years, it's 384.
Yeah, we just got updated quotes last week,
Okay.
so I've given you numbers that
So then,
I've got from those quotes, not
We had a
necessarily
lengthy
what's
conference call
reflected
trying to see whether or
in
not we
our
could narrow
budget.
that down.
so would the number then for this year be half of 384 if we did over 2 years, or is it still the first year 207 and the second year would be less?
Based on this conference call that we had, the number for this year is 230.
So this year's 230.
But the budget says 206, so we're behind.
Okay, and then
But
the
we
following
don't
year would be
know-
154.
Well, we don't know exactly what it will be the following year because they can't commit to, you know, what
Oh, the
inflation
cost of-
is and
Right.
shipping and all of that for another
So
year.
they just told you their
so-
best, in their opinion, if we were to agree to something, it would be about 384,000.
Right.
That's good, yeah.
you did over
they-
2
they-
years.
They priced out the whole thing, and then they said if you do it all now, we'd give you $40,000 off. That's where so that's how we ended up with $344,000. And then, you know, so we talked to them and said, well, how much would it be for this now? Because we had 207 or 206 in our budget. And they said, well, those components would cost 230. So we already have some money that's got to be made up there, you know, even if we continue with plan.
And remember, there are 2 vendors that are still in the picture.
Right.
Because we have some students piloting one and some another, and later on, not much later, actually,
April 29th.
April, there will be a decision made as to which. We think the amount of money we have will take care of either of the 2 options that we have, but we don't have that decision.
And then we'll get really solid pricing once we go to order and stuff, and it's gonna be within range of where we're at here, you know?
All right, so, 1 second, Linda. Okay. So, everyone sees, here's the numbers. We have a budget gap of 441,000. What I'd like everyone to do is everyone has the additions and everything, think about your ideas of how to possibly shrink that budget gap. Carol has already said that she would possibly like to entertain going with the $48 million number. That's obviously an option, but.
Or a different number, I'm just saying.
I'm just taking, I'm just summarizing. But in the interim, let's try to attack it on both sides. Everyone think about it so that we can communicate, and just communicate directly with Dr. Gallo your ideas. Are you going to try to have us?
I'll have a proposal for you.
At the next meeting?
At the next meeting.
Okay,
Right.
good. Linda, do you have something you want to say?
I know. Just, I think, a clarifying statement about the Education Subcommittee when we made our recommendation. The numbers we were looking at, our recommendation was $410,000 less than the school administration recommended budget at that time. Of that $410,000, $397,000 of that was still new additions. The Education Subcommittee did not look at any new additions. So if you want to include new additions, then, I mean, that's your priority, and that's how you can. But if you take the 397,000 new additions that were the difference in that 410, we're only $13,000 apart. That wasn't a big gap. Now, our priorities were different. We look at the numbers differently, but our recommendation was not that, I mean, $13,000 apart if you took out all of the additions, which is the way we were looking at the budget. So just to clarify, I mean, we're not, again, we never went into this thinking you were going to be cutting teachers, and so I don't want you to ever think.
Telling us to do that, we're just.
No, I'm just saying,
We
so
perceive
you're
that
the
these
way you're
things are needs as
prioritizing.
well.
If you want to include those additions, then, that's your prerogative and that's how you have to prioritize. But when we were looking at the budget and when we made our recommendation, we just didn't add anything new.
Right, and Andy, just a quick comment, so of that number, 119 is the differential for the new bus lease.
Right.
So,
Again.
many
yeah.
of us have discussed that that's a priority. We're hearing more and more, and we get emails and updates on almost a daily basis now with more stories about breakdowns and problems with these buses. And I would submit, and this is not directed at you personally,
No,
so
I know,
please.
none of it is.
I would submit to those watching and those who will watch it that police is getting new cars this year. They get new cars every year, okay, regardless. I can't remember a year when they didn't get new cars, and someone will probably correct me when they watch this, and they'll tell me when they didn't get new cars, but I can't remember. And I don't see this any different, that we need buses that work properly and are safe, for those who use that word, to transport our children on a daily basis. I don't see that as any different or any less important than police vehicles or fire vehicles or anything else.
As we said, we thought your additions were justified. The money isn't there.
So I think this is a good discussion. Everyone knows our task at hand. Before we move on to 7.4, did anyone in the audience have any comments or questions? Good. All right. 7.4, to hear an update on matters related to the NEASC high school accreditation process. Dr. Gallo.
Well, this is just to keep you apprised, because as you know, this is part of the self-study process for the fall 2017 accreditation visit to Hingham High School. So there's a little more than a year period of self-study, and high school staff is divided up into committees that are looking at a number of standards. And one of those standards has to do with things like the relationship between the principal of the school and those of us that support that principal. One, that's standard 12. The other one has to do with how the school committee and the superintendent support the high school in terms of its mission. And so indicator 11 asks that question, and we have to provide evidence. So shared that standard with you at the last meeting and told you that I would be putting together a document that kind of summarizes how I think the school committee and the superintendent support the functioning of the high school through budget, through meetings, through a number of interactions during the year. And so I summarized those, and I said I would give that back to you so that you would know what I said in our behalf, and that's what that document reflects. I do plan at each meeting to say something about the accreditation process. There was a parent survey, and I want to say this publicly because when I checked the other day, not a great response to date, and I know Paula has sent a couple of X2 messages out reminding people. So important, just important to have the input from parents. There's a parent survey and a staff survey and a student survey that have been sent out. I was going to ask Paula and I did ask her, whether or not there's any way we can get it's electronic, a paper copy so that I could share it with all of you who don't have high school children so you could see what it's like. She's going to look into that as to whether we can contact Endicott to actually get a paper survey, even if they put draft all over it or something so it doesn't get misused. So that's something I'd like you to share because the survey really doesn't just ask, well, do you like what's happening at the high school? Do kids have enough activities? Are the teachers of quality? And so on. But each one of the questions has to do with the standards, not just opinion, but related to the standards. So I'll be sharing more of that information as we go along, but this is simply what I wrote in response to indicator 11 of Standard 5.
When's the exact date they come in again?
The team will be here in the fall. I don't think we have a specific date, but fall of 2017.
This still has us, though, this still says that at least one school committee meeting is going to be held at the high school.
Well,
I thought
the one still is.
It is?
The town meeting
The
one.
town meeting counts
Yeah.
as that, okay.
And it would be fall of 17 or fall of 16?
Fall of 17.
Good, great.
The self-study goes on, in a sense, over 2 years. Last year, the focus was on writing a new mission and expectations. This year, the focus is on the surveys and the analysis of the surveys, and that's the process we're in right now, and then beginning with those standards reports, and that will continue through next year, 16, 17, and then the team will come in fall of 17. But I would urge any parents who may be out there listening tonight, if you haven't done the survey, please complete the survey. It's online. And Paula's done a couple reminders. I'll do another one as well. But really important information for us and a good opportunity for all of you as well.
Maybe we won't let them have Good Friday off until they do their survey.
Oh, that's a thought.
Yeah. Good. Any questions for Dr. Gallo on 7.4? 7.5, to receive notification of a late night field trip of the middle school grade 7th and 8th drama and junior choral spectrum to New York City School of Rock on June 4th, 16.
Yeah, I think this is the second. I think they went last year and had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so I would be recommending it.
Good. Good thing. I see that they're using coach buses, so that's good.
It's an up and back in one day, so they need something.
But at least we know they'll make it.
They need Wi-Fi at least, right?
Well, at least they have coach buses.
That's really all they need.
Right.
And a bathroom.
To receive the list of recommended spring 2016 coaches assignments. Pretty much straightforward. To receive notification of resignation.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
Actually, Margaret, question for Margaret. What's the difference between boys track and boys and girls track? And then there's a separate girls track.
So somebody works with both.
Yeah, I
What it is?
suspect that's what
Somebody
it
works
is.
with both
Well, I think
groups.
in track, I think they have some specialist coaches because
Mhm.
there are all of the different events in the spring track. So someone who does,
Yeah, like
you know,
Like jumping,
hurdles
Jumping
versus-
some of the jumping events
Jumping
works with
and
both
Pole
boys and girls.
vaulting,
And I
jumping.
assume golf is for the boys is the fall?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, two different seasons
Yeah.
for boys and girls go.
And typically,
That's good.
I can tell you, spring track, boys and girls have in excess of 120 kids involved, at least in the past.
Yeah, it's like 300 total or
Wow.
something.
If I was going to be on a track team, and I had my choice between the boys track or the
Or
boys and
two
girls
on
track.
the
No-brainer.
That's what through my mind.
Two teams, but one coach works.
Right. 7.7, to receive a resignation of a paraeducator. We wish that person good luck. 8.0, other items as may not be reasonably known 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Okay.
This latter discussion.
Yes,
We had the
right.
discussion.
Subcommittee reports. So, one thing that we need to think about is on the Hawk project, it was not a unanimous decision. There was a minority vote. I don't know if the minority vote is going to speak at town meeting. We're going to learn more about that. Many of us know the procedures of how it goes, but we're going to continue to verify with Mike, the town moderator. Usually, in the past, if there is going to be a minority opinion, Dan Coughlin would probably speak for the affirmative. Then if Eric wanted to speak in the minority, he would speak, and then other people could speak. The main thing that we have to think about, which we don't have to decide now, and obviously long-range planning, if you guys want to meet, I would give you guys the nod, is what we want to do, if anything. Do we want to accept, the will of the committee? Do we want to just use it as an educational experience to remind people how big the school system is and some of the projects that we're working on? But that's just something that I would defer to you guys to think over, and just, we need to come to some sort of consensus, if any. So that's just an update on that.
Do you guys need to meet to talk about that? I mean, I think there's value in presenting to a larger group
Absolutely.
this project.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we will plan on, I'll make sure that is communicated efficiently, and keep everyone posted on that. Good. So, moving down the line, community outreach.
We've got a meeting scheduled for March 28th at 10.
Good. Dr. Ed.
Just a couple of public service announcements. Wednesday evening, March 16th, day after tomorrow, at the high school, at 5:30 to 7:30, the Hingham Business Council of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring the second annual Pizza Palooza. And this is a fundraiser where the ticket proceeds go to SNAP. So again, that's this coming Wednesday, the 16th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the high school, $10 per person or $30 per family. And Friday night, the 18th, March 18th, at the Hingham Community Center, the SNAP is presenting their annual annual St. Patrick's Day party. Friday, March 18th, 7 to 11 p.m., $35 tickets at the door.
Wonderful. Carol, we know we're going to...
Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow, but also Hingham Ed is sponsoring its Friday Night Lights on Friday, April 1st. Get your tickets. It should be a fun event at Black Rock.
Wonderful. Ray, do you have any other comments?
Just to remind folks, kind of good news about the capital budget, even though initially there was discussion about reducing what they were giving us. I think they ultimately approved the full amount that we were told. That's the 867,155, right? So that's good news. We'll be able to get a lot of good projects done with that next year. And also, just a question. So I know that the PRS window article remains in the warrant, even though there was a vote of.
I had thought that it was taken
Yeah.
out.
They never voted.
It was still in there.
Because we communicated with them that.
So
Yeah, they
once we submitted, it was in the warrant. So
Yeah,
unless they took it
right,
out,
but they opened the warrant, did they not? And Betty did ask us for a written statement that this committee had voted
okay.
to remove it. So
Okay, I was asking, because the last time I checked, I thought it was still in there, so I was just curious about that, because it would make sense to remove it, to withdraw it if.
And we could only remove it if they opened the warrant. I believe they did open the warrant.
Yeah.
And so it should not be there now.
Okay,
because
just- I was just
That would be
checking.
an error.
Yep.
Anything else on policy?
Yeah, just as a quick update on the resolution that we passed. The current tally that the Suburban Coalition has collected of towns who have of school committees, 37 have passed the original or something modified. There were other towns that modified similar to ours. There are more than 14 that it's on their agenda to pass, so that's for more than 51 communities. I included in the packet, I sent the resolution to Garrett Bradley. Have not heard back from Jamie Murphy, but Garrett had indicated, I shared with you, that the Ways and Means Committee is very aware of this request. I also shared it with our Selectmen and Advisory Committee, and they are open to considering it, but once they finish the warrant work that they have to do for a town meeting. And policy is meeting in a couple weeks. I don't remember the date right now, but we'll finalize the updates to section 7.4, and we are in the process of reviewing sections 5 and 6 and making some progress on that. And I also included in the packet, Carol had asked, and I finally pulled out the questions that we had sent to the DESC with Garrett Bradley about the accountability system. I sent all of you that letter, and actually on Thursday, I think, Gigi forwarded me that she got an answer from the DESC to the questions, and kind of vague, but Dr. Gallo, Ellen, Mary Eastwood, and I are going to review those answers, and then we'll report back once we've reviewed that. And Gigi had mentioned that maybe we should set up a meeting. This is I forget his exact title, but he's like Senior Vice President of Accountability for the DESC. And we could, I think, be helpful for him if we shared our perspective, because there were some views that were quite different from what he had presented to what we're experiencing with our teachers and students. So, so we have had progress on that, and once I gather that information, I'll share it with all of you. So.
Any other comments? Dr. Gallo, do you have any other words?
No.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn to executive session, not to return to regular session, to discuss strategies with respect to matters related to the collective bargaining agreement with the HEA Unit A, the collective bargaining agreement with the Custodians and Maintenance Workers Association, bargain with non-union personnel, and to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, leasing, or value of real property in such discussions which will have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the school committee. Everyone must affirm individually that they agree to go into
I'll
this.
second your motion.
Please second. Second, thank you.
Aye.
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 Aye. Regular meeting adjourned at 9:06. 9:08, excuse me.